Hello, my name is Juan Diego, and welcome to the next episode of our podcast. The next topic will be capitalism in gamification. But what specifically are we going to talk about? Today's thesis is gamification, a tool of capitalism for the new generations. Today's topic came to my mind after an experience I remember, in which in one of the jobs I had here in Germany, specifically at Amazon, I was working at the warehouse in the packing line. So we're basically like loading packages on a receiving line, and those were like at the end of the line. There were like some sort of saturation to zones that afterwards were coming to the cars, but whatever. And in this work, we were shown on huge screens at the end of the receiving line a series of numbers with some kind of goals to accomplish in the day. But they did it in a way that the employee was much more focused on, in a way, accomplishing the goal rather than focusing the work itself. I noticed this because they showed the previous these numbers and something to, let's say, overcome. And if you get up with the pace necessary to meet this goal, the screen will light up in green, the pace of the line that achieved it basically. And in this way, I suppose they were trying to make it a kind of race between each of the receiving lines. And what made me most curious about it is that they achieved the goal with this, and I didn't realize this was some kind of gamification until now. I remember like how I, along with other employees, loaded the lines box very quickly, and at the only break we had were like seconds it took to open a new load of boxes and catch up with the piece of the moment. I don't know, 4 or 5 seconds until we got like the new batch. And by the end of the chips, we were, of course, terribly tired, and also, as expected, within weeks of being in this position, even though I was working with just 4 hours a day, I had to ask for a switch of positions because my body couldn't take it anymore, of course. So yeah, I was also wondering how these adaptations of the tools of capitalism happened, as it does at Amazon, for example, and surely at many other companies around the world. There is no need to discuss the origin of gamification, of course. We know that it has always been there, and we know that it's not a unique characteristic of human species. But for some time, how many of the everyday human experiences have been transformed into a gamified process? We know, like, for example, I say exercising, cooking, and cleaning the house have some kind of transformation into playable experiences, as these make the task much more bearable and easy to accomplish. So yeah, basically it makes sense with the origin, right? But these have caused the companies around the world like to focus on this process in general, and adapt it to the environment and establish it as an instrument of control over the employee. Of course, this is the ideal way to make the employee much more productive without having to keep constant control over them, right? As the very essence of play in the human is what motivates the employee to push themselves to their limits, masking any task they have as something to be enjoyed. And as I say, of course, this sounds like a dream for any company and entrepreneur looking for increased profits without investing so much, right? So they get this increase without the need to compensate the employees in what could be argued as the, let's say, the right way. As Mariam Disgalvdai in her Medium column explains, that the more successful the game, the larger the uncompensated productive boost. So yeah, these playable experiences that have got to us in the past years, experiences like, for example, The Investigator, which is, let's say, some kind of serious video game used on jobs, where basically it's used for HR employees. And on this game, they are trained on how to conduct workplace investigations. Or, for example, in McDonald's, where the employees have some point systems where basically they perform as a player, and this player like earn points between certain tasks that they make through their shifts, and they level up, and depending on how much they level up, this can result in incentive, like, yeah. And of course there is much more examples like this, and this kind of gamified elements shows that this trend has been becoming more and more popular in the world in the past few years. So yeah, and this is not just about like explaining something like, yeah, this is happening word and that's it. No, I think I wanted also to do this to kind of stand my position and show where my critique is, and this is where this critique begins, if no, it began when I started my podcast, right? I was wondering like what happens when these gamification processes in companies result in something to be done outside of work. How much do they affect, and will they affect the employee? The gamification in capitalism will eventually turn any time into production time, which turns into profit for the company, definitely not for the employee. And the employee, as happened to me at Amazon for example, will give up important characteristics that should be in his or in her own motivation outside of work, and these characteristics will be replaced by the supposed motivations that work provides by playing these games. And as a result of this, our freedom as individuals in front of a company will be much more reduced than it already is, right? Because it is already. We don't have as much as freedom as before, of course. Let's say before, like in a big parenthesis, because it's really subjective that, but whatever. So yeah, will people be seduced by will people be seduced by these new exploitative systems? And this is just because they're disguised as a space for raw self-expression as fun, supposedly fun and supposedly growth. And I will say that yeah, definitely this is going to happen. The act of incorporating these processes into elements of everyday life also serves as a function of incorporating a capitalist way of thinking into the human mindset. And this is where the value as reward system ends up being the priority to the player. Let's call it the player. And this has been going for a long time, as is well established in entire societies and governments. Let's put an example here on the table. China, for example, where the uses point system in its place, of which citizens were different, like behaviors can lead into incentive, while contrary behaviors that are not well seen in society can lead to a decrease in these points, and consequently decrease on benefits among society, like bank credits, or like get the job you want, whatever. And yeah, this is not only happening in China, because that's, for example, one of the arguments that people tend to use, like, yeah, China is happening that because it's communist and whatever, but no, this happens in the same way in Western countries, only I will just say in a softer way, through, for example, the companies where we work, or the places where we live, or the service we use, for example, banks and credits, for example, Schufa in Germany, or whatever, is some sort of soft way to use elements of gamification to control the behavior of the people. And well, yeah, let's just like wrapping up everything. It is true that all cultural elements have their flaws and their benefits. This, of course, depending on how they're used and applied in society. And definitely, like, to conclude my intervention from today, this really short podcast, it only remains for me to get some hope that they apply these methods in a way that benefits the player, as games are, and does not end up becoming one more way for applying control over the human being. So yeah, my time running up like 2 minutes ago. I hope there is no problem with that. But yeah, thank you for joining us tonight and see you next week.